Coming up, the story of a music critic who quit the popular magazine that he was writing for, he's actually the editor, to become what he critiqued, a musician. He was mocked and he was ridiculed by his coworkers. But that stopped when he hit #1 less than a year later with a song that failed to chart its first time around, but then it was re-recorded with the help of a hit producer. It became an 80s classic, one of the coolest songs of its time. It came from a poem written in 1922, and it became the first of 44 top 40 hits for his band. Stories coming up next on Professor of Rock. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you remember the first record, or the first cassette, or the first 8-track, or the first CD that you bought with your own money, you're gonna dig this channel. It's nostalgia all the time. Make sure that you subscribe below right now. You wanna make sure that you never miss an episode. We also do have a Patreon you wanna check out. We have an additional catalog of exclusive content there. You can even become an honorary producer to help us curate this music history. So it's time to return to another one of my favorite shows that we do on this channel. It's called Breakthrough. If you haven't seen it before, in this show we break down songs or albums or events that kicked open the door to an artist or a band's career, giving them that momentum to secure long-term success. Previous episodes have included Boys Don't Cry by The Cure, Do You Believe in Love by Huey Lewis and the News, and American Girl by Tom Petty. So today we're covering one of my favorite duos of all time, if not my favorite, Pet Shop Boys, with their extraordinary synth-pop ditty, West End Girls.
The Eastern boys and Western girls.
This song has such a unique and mysterious story behind it because it was released twice. And the first time it failed. The second time it became a massive hit. Gotta find out why. Let's go back to the origin. So on the fateful day of August 19th, 1981, two strangers met in a London area hi-fi shop and they struck up a conversation while waiting at the counter. Their names? Tennant and Chris Lowe. Now as they talked, they soon realized that they shared a mutual passion for synthesizers and also for electronic dance music. What followed from there was a near instantaneous connection, and the duo agreed to start writing music together. Not long after that, they set to work crafting some of the most seriously infectious melodies that the 1980s or any other decade has ever heard. So many great songs. Now, initially, Neil and Chris called themselves West End. But later they latched on to Pet Shop Boys. It was a name inspired by some friends who worked at a local pet shop. In their minds, the moniker sounded something like an English rap group. Now, this is what Neil Tennant said about it. There were lots of groups like the Beach Boys and the Beatbox Boys and the Beastie Boys, so we thought we'd become the Pet Shop Boys because the boys, it sounded New York, and Pet Shop sounded really kind of English and weird. Now, while the boys worked on their music, Neil kept up with his day job. He was a deputy editor for the music magazine Smash Hits, and Chris stayed busy. He was studying architecture at Liverpool University. These pursuits proved to be just a means to an end, however, because on Saturday nights, the two of them would immerse themselves in their true passion, writing music. Week after week after week, they honed their musical chops, recording demos at this little studio off Camden Road in London. Now, on one occasion, Neil Tennant remembers going into the studio and telling Chris and the studio owner that he'd written a rap song. Though he was kind of embarrassed, he did perform it for him, and luckily they were sufficiently impressed. That rap was the beginning of the future worldwide hit, West End Girls. Now, in August of 1983, Neil was assigned by Smash Hits to do an interview with Sting after a Police concert in New York. Now, Neil had an ulterior motive, though, when he accepted the assignment. He and Chris were obsessed with the work of cult disco producer Bobby O. It was the Pet Shop Boys' grand ambition to be a hip underground dance group, and they thought that Bobby O could make it happen for them. And Bobby O just so happened to be in New York as well. So while he was there, Neil asked Bobby if he had ever worked with any English groups. And the producer replied that no one had ever asked him. So seizing on that moment, Neil pulled out a demo tape that he specially prepared for that occasion. And Bobby liked what he heard, and just 3 weeks later, the Pet Shop Boys were back in New York and they were recording with Bobby O. During this session, a preliminary version of West End Girls emerged. It was made, recorded, and mixed in only about 4, maybe 5 hours. This original cut of West End Girls was released on Columbia's imprint Bobcat Records. That happened in April of 1984.
Underground to a dive bar in a West End town,
But according to Neil Tennant, there was a deafening silence when West End Girls was released. The record came out, it wasn't really played on the radio, though it did become a minor hit on the US West Coast and in parts of Europe. That's what everybody says. It was a hit in parts of Europe. West End Girls flopped in the UK, though. The future was uncertain for the duo at that point. So months later, the Pet Shop Boys got an unexpected phone call from Brussels. Somehow West End Girls had managed to reach #1 on the charts in Belgium. Knocking off a very popular Duran Duran from that top spot. So the Pet Shop Boys were then invited to make their first TV appearance in Belgium. And from there, West End Girls started to gain some serious momentum. So Chris and Neil hired manager Tom Watkins, whose company, Massive, helped remove the two of them from an expensive contract that they were in with Bobby O. In April of 1985, Neil resigned from Smash Hits, who in response published a mock obituary predicting that Neil Tennant would come crawling back on bended knees when the Pet Shop Boys ultimately failed, is what they said. Of course, that didn't happen. The duo next teamed up with American producer Stephen Hague to record their first LP, Please. A name chosen so that when people bought the album, they could say, "Can I have the Pet Shop Boys album, please?" The 11-track record had so many classics. It included the singles Opportunities, Let's Make Lots of Money. Which would become a song indelibly tied to the 80s. Also, the beautiful ballad Love Comes Quickly. And the wonderfully funny Suburbia. And the album track Tonight is Forever. I love that song. Unsurprisingly, the song that paved the way for the album in the first place also landed a spot. This time, though, it was given a fresh coat of paint.
Too many choices, if, when, why, what, how much have you got?
Pet Shop Boys felt like with more time in the studio, they could come up with a much better version. The re-recorded West End Girls, that was released on October 28th, 1985. UK charts went all the way to -- 1. By December of 85, Neil and Chris were playing Top of the Pops.
Restaurant in a West End town. Call the police, there's a madman around running down.
By April 86, West End Girls had gone to #1 in America. The song would also top the charts in Canada, Finland, Hong Kong, Ireland, Israel, New Zealand, and Norway. It sold 1.5 million copies. So why did it fail on first release, but the very same song was a massive hit the second time around? Well, in my opinion, first of all, seemed like with more time, they let the song marinate, with the duo. They found the hooks that set the radio bonfire. The beginning ambiance of the second version, it takes you to another world. And then the synth hook is more pronounced. Neil's voice is also more confident. It's more in your face, whereas in the first version, there was some hesitation, even reluctance.
Western town, a dead end world. The eastern boys and western girls. In a western town, a dead end world. The eastern boys and western.
Definitely more layers in the second version. I think Hague's production of the second release was more direct, more evolved. Having an iconic music video to go along with it certainly helped.
A dead end world. The eastern boys and western girls.
The second release just captured you from the first beat, and it just leaves you entranced. West End Girls is one of those sucker punch musical moments where the first time that you hear it, you can't believe what you're hearing. It's like a burst of ultimate cool combined with this expansive layer of synth-pop noir set to an infectious disco beat, atmospheric and deeply satisfying.
West End girls.
Neil's distinctive deadpan voice it's the perfect storytelling device for the song. His vocal stylings are saturated with an intellectual confidence, it seems, touched with a hint of sarcasm.
Too many choices. If, when, why, what, how much have you got?
West End Girls is a song with so many layers, as I said. As you peel them back, you discover reason after reason after reason to fall even deeper in love with this amazing song. According to Neil, West End Girls is quite a lot of records in one. It's a dance record, it was written to be an English rap record, and it's a moody soundscape on top of all that. Intentionally cinematic in its sound and its feel, it begins like a film noir with someone walking down the street, and when the chord comes in, it feels quite dark, quite sinister. Because the song is so multifaceted, it's no surprise that a number of influences inspired its creation. The vocals are delivered from various perspectives, creating a kind of a lyrical collage, an idea that Neil Tennant has said was influenced by the T.S. Eliot 1922 poem, The Wasteland. Grandmaster Flash's 1982 single, The Message, was also significant. Informing West End's catchy bass riff. Actually, Neil Tennant was quite taken with the burgeoning US rap scene, and he thought that the song would make a strong impact if they released it as an English accented rap. It wasn't until they went into the studio that Neil decided to sing the hook instead of rap it. I think that was smart. His voice has just got such a magic to it. Additionally, the opening lines of West End Girls took their cue from a James Cagney gangster movie, the one that he had watched at his cousin's house.
Come out and take it, you dirty yellow-bellied rat, or I'll give it to you through the door.
Apparently, before falling asleep that night, the lyrics came to him, so he turned the lights back on and he wrote them all down. Sometimes you're better off dead. There's a gun in your hand and it's pointing at your head. You think you're mad, too unstable, kicking in chairs and knocking down tables.
Pointing at your head, you think you're mad, too unstable, kicking in chairs and knocking down tables.
Absolutely brilliant lyrical storytelling from the get-go. It's one of the great first lines of a song from the 80s. You immediately feel the overflowing angst, and you're sucked in wanting to know, what happens next. It's just an unforgettable opening. The song itself is about the pressures of inner city life and the search for release. The lyrics take you on this journey through the club scene in London and center on the exhilarations of city nightlife. The glamorous West End is where all the action is. It was a scene where, Neil Tennant and Chris Lowe spent many evenings, where boys and girls met in clubs to have fun and to escape the stress of daily life. I hear opposites attract. The rough and outcast East End boys cross town for a shot at the posh and alluring West End girls. You got a heart of glass or a heart of stone, just you wait till I get you home.
You got a heart of glass or a heart of stone, just you wait till I get you home.
Coming in, from different backgrounds, in a dead-end world, you sense that these East End boys and West End girls just maybe found what they're looking for, if it's just even for a night. We got no future, we've got no past, here today, built to last.
No future, we've got no past, here today, built to last.
Here today, it seems like that's all they have, a moment of indulgence and gratification, a night of escape, if you will. But when the morning arrives, it will all be gone, yet it will have been worth it. For us as listeners, it's definitely worth it. one of the greatest songs of 1986. Just like these West End girls and East End boys, each of us longs to be liberated from the captivity of the grind, the daily grind. West End Girls just transports you out of the gridlock of that daily life and into a rich and seductive fantasy that we immediately want to make our reality. There are a few 80s songs that did that and still do that so effectively. West End Girls has been featured on a lot of shows. It was on Moonlighting in '86. American Dad in 2006. The Simpsons in 2003. Diana in 2013, Gotti in 2018, and the Romanoffs in the same year. In video games, you can find it on the radio, Grand Theft Auto. West End Girls is no doubt one of the finest singles of the 80s. It's a treasure from the final chapters of the new wave era that still sounds as brilliant today as it did back in 1986. I mean, let's be honest here. It's just one in an extensive catalog of memorable offerings from the dynamic disco pop duo of synth. These masters of sophistication and highbrow musical pop art have sold over 100 million units worldwide. They've had 44 top 40 hits in the UK, 6 top 20 hits in America. They're the 5th most successful act on the US Dance Club Play chart, and the Guinness Book of World Records lists them as the most successful duo in UK music history. I mean, stop and think about that for a minute. This is one of those songs where I remember exactly where I was when I first heard it. I remember I had slept over at my best friend and cousin's house, Mark, and we'd stayed up late playing Star Wars figures, played on his computer. I remember we played the Ghostbusters game. And that Bird versus Dr. J one-on-one. Man, those were great games. We woke up, we're watching MTV, and the video for West End Girls came on. None of us spoke until it was over. We both looked at each other and we went, that was rad. I remember following it up the charts. When it snuck into #1 for 1 week, it just was an amazing time in radio. The top 10 of that week, I mean, it had the Outfield, Your Love, Van Halen, Why Can't This Be Love? Phil Collins, Take Me Home. And OMD, If You Leave.
If you leave, don't leave now. Please don't.
So much diversity in genre and sound. West End Girls won Best Single at the Brit Awards, Best International Hit at the Ivor Novello Awards, was named the Song of the Decade between the years of '85 and '94 by the British Academy of Composers and Songwriters. Also, The Guardian selected West End Girls as #1 of the greatest UK #1 singles. And to think that it failed on its first release, but they knew that they had something. And so after going back to the drawing board, they redesigned it, and that really made the difference. It's just like the lyrics of the song. It was built to last in every city and every nation, from Lake Geneva to the Finland station.
Every city and every nation, from Lake Geneva to the Finland station.
Sorry, I had to. Bad joke. Leave us a comment about the Pet Shop Boys and this single that started it all, the breakthrough. What are your memories of West End Girls? Which version did you discover first? What about that top 10 from '86? Let us know in the comments. And make sure to subscribe if you like this episode. We'd love to have you as part of our community. Check out our merch. Check us out on Patreon. It's all about keeping the music alive. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.